Hi and welcome to another LRCC Soundbite. Today is a very special day for the church. We call it the Day of Pentecost. A lot of people in the church think of Pentecost as being the birthday of the church, but in fact it was a long-standing celebration in Israel that goes back way before the church existed. It's a festival that came 50 days after the Passover festival, which is the biggest festival in Israel. It's used to celebrate the wheat harvest. It was also used later to celebrate the time when Moses was given God's law. All those things are things that I've been talking about if you've been watching over the last few weeks. Well, it just so happened that it was also on this day that God decided to fulfill a promise that Jesus made to his friends before he went back to heaven. But before I tell you about that, I want to go back to Moses and tell you a little bit about his experience of God. You see, back when Moses lived and he was leading the Israelite nation away from Egypt and to the land that God had promised them, Moses did keep having his little wobbles. He kept wanting to make sure that God was there and wasn't going to leave him in the lurch, so to speak. Now, after Moses had got the law from God, he came down from the mountain where he'd been talking to God and getting it, and he found the people already doing things against what God had already told them. They'd started making idols and worshipping them instead of God. Moses knew that God was not going to be very happy about this. So after he gave the people a piece of his mind, Moses went back to God and asked God if he would still stay with him and go with him as he led the people. And God said one of the most amazing things, I think, to Moses. God said, "I am your friend and I'm pleased with you." I mean, what amazing words to hear from the creator of the universe. I am your friend. So Moses got his proof, and God's promise was there to always go with him. So what was going to happen for Jesus' friends on the day of Pentecost? Well, this is just after Jesus has gone back to heaven. And what was going to happen was going to be just as amazing and in many ways very similar to some of the stuff that happened to Moses. Jesus had promised that he would send a helper, someone he called the Holy Spirit, to be with his friends and followers on earth after he'd gone back to heaven. And that's what was going to happen this day. And it didn't happen quietly. You know, as Jesus' friends were all praying together, all of a sudden it sounded like there was a great wind blowing through the house they were in. And they looked and saw something they couldn't quite describe that was touching each of them. The best description they could come up with was that it was a bit like tongues of fire, but not hot or burning. As that happened, they all realised that something incredible had changed. They could feel God with them. One of the first things that they found they could do was speak in other languages to enable themselves to be understood by people from far off lands who were visiting Jerusalem at the time. They also found that God was helping them know what to say and who to say it to. All sorts of amazing things. They could help people who were ill, just like Jesus had. God was with them in a way that had never happened before. It was great. Jesus was no longer the only person on earth who brought God into everyday life. Everyone who followed Jesus was now able to do that. And that's why it's known as the birthday of the church. It's when the church started. The Bible tells us that on that first day, thousands of people heard what Jesus' friends were saying, believed it, and became new followers of Jesus. The church remembers it. So, happy birthday to us. We also remember because the Holy Spirit didn't stop there. He's still with us today. Helps us in all sorts of ways. I'd really like to be able to talk more about it, but time is not on my side. If you want to hear more about it or you want to talk to me more about stuff, do just get in touch as always. I hope you have a great week. I'll see you next time. God bless you.